Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. I'm Greg Norman, your host. We've got a very special show today. We're going to cover the South Shore Yacht Club's famous Queen's Cup for the 2021 version. We have Kieran Seal with us today, who is the project manager for Victor Wild's GP52 boat entitled Fox. They were the racers, and he's going to talk a little bit about all the bugs in the drifter that started the race and ended up coming through all kinds of obstacles and weather, and finished in Muskegon, and we're going to talk to them. We're also going to talk to Craig Griffith from the South Shore Yacht Club, who is actually the race director, and his glue, if you will, young lady by the name of Sherry Kent Jones. And Sherry's going to talk a little bit about the race and the organizational part of the Queen's Cup. I think you'll get a really good insight. Then we're going to take a trip down memory lane. A friend that I've known, and Kenny's going to show off his 47-foot boat that was built 75 years ago. That's been a couple of years getting ready and has been in a couple of Queen's Cups. And it'll be real interesting to look at a boat that's 8 years older than I am. We'll take a look at all of that, and we'll be back in just a second. Welcome back to Inside Great Lakes Sailing. We're talking with Queen's Cup race director Craig Griffith from the South Shore Yacht Club. And I think his right-hand man, and probably somebody who's the glue that holds a lot of the Queen's Cup together, Craig, if I'm overstating that, that's Sherry Kent Jones, who you can't put on a race this size without all kinds of help. So my very first question is, talk a little bit about the race. It was a week ago. You had 135 boats and about 90 finishers. Maybe talk a little bit about that, and then maybe Craig, you can expound on exactly where Sherry fits in and how much help she's been to you.
Well, talking to competitors as they were coming off the boats looking like drowned rats, they were drowned rats, but they had smiles on their faces, despite a little over a 3-hour postponement. The fog was so thick we couldn't even find our starting mark, much less get a race off. But things opened up and we had a window of opportunity to get the race off. We brought down the AP, sent everybody off the docks. I got a huge round of applause, which really felt good. And we got the race off. And as Sherry can attest, actually doing the race, I was able to beat her around, so she may owe me a cocktail. I drove. She was on one of the 52s, but the race offered it was a tactically challenging race for a change. There was a little bit of everything that thrown to the competitors. Where if the boats that paid attention to the shifts and the lulls did very well and were able to position themselves for a good finish. Those expecting the kind of the Ronco race where you set it and forget it, ended up at the back of the fleet. So. People overall thoroughly enjoyed it, and I think had a great time.
I've heard that you've had lots of bugs to start, a little bit of drifted, and as much as 40 knots in the middle of the lake. And Sherry, is that pretty accurate?
Well, we saw between two. Yes, for starters, we saw between 2 and about 18 knots. So we saw that spread through the race. The start was foggy and dead. There were sections that were, somebody referred to it as bumper boats. You've heard that before, too many times. So there was one section with bumper boats, and I don't recall if it was 2 sections or not, but there there was some touching going on there. Crews were great about fending off, and everything started fine, but the start was very light. And then, of course, fog filled back in. We had rain. We had no air. We picked up again. We saw probably between 7 and 12 knots almost all the way. Right in the middle of a thunderstorm, we hit 2 knots a little bit. That's a little frightening when you think you're going to sit in that pouring rain for a little bit too long. But yeah, it was everything, but it was definitely a very interesting start. In fact, Craig sent over some pictures this morning that the start boat took, and they're a little depressing. They're very foggy. They look like the camera's out of focus, and there's a lot of, you can just look at it, a lot of drifting, little bit of little movement on the water, but that's only because there were some spectator boats actually.
Are you sure that the camera was out of focus? It wasn't just the rum leaving your system still?
It was everybody, right?
Craig, why is it a night race?
Well, the Laurie family who brought the cup to South Shore Yacht Club in the I believe in the 30s. They dictated in the deed. They dictated the terms of the race, and essentially per the deed for the cup itself, it's a night race that starts in Milwaukee and finishes at a port in Michigan. So it's something that something a little different, even though it's essentially a distance sprint. It's not your typical race. We've got the Trip Cup that comes over and feeds us on Wednesday to Thursday before the Queen's Cup, which is a daytime race, and then coming up in August, Muskegon has what is it, Cherry? I believe it's the Clipper Cup.
It's the Clipper Cup,
which goes from Muskegon to Port Washington. So, and that's another day race. So this helps us stand out a little bit, and gives a little challenge, and also helps crews prepare for some of the longer distance races like the Mac and the Hook to kind of getting in the rhythm of a watch schedule and just the exhaustion of trying to stay up all night.
The race finished this year in Muskegon, but you've had race finishes in, I think, if I'm not mistaken, St. Joe's, South Haven, Macatawa. Are those the only 4, or do you have another?
Next year we'll be finishing in Grand Haven.
Okay.
And we had Ludington.
We've done Ludington in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a regular rotation?
We're Muskegon has been such a wonderful partner for us. We're looking to kind of set up a regular rotation, and that way competitors can plan their seasons well in advance, and especially fleets like the GL52s, 40.7s, J111s, and those type of boats. The more consistency we can have in the race, I think the better draw we'll have for some of these big one design fleets on the lake.
Sherry, what's the percentage, just the ballpark percentage of the serious racers, guys that are on the 52s and the J's and those kinds of boats, and then a guy like me who's got a 30-foot O'Day that just wants to race across the lake and enjoy himself, and instead of doing it in 5.5 or 6 hours, does it in 12 hours.
The percentage mix?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
That's a good question. The section, Craig, what do you think? It's probably a 50-50.
Yeah, it's probably pretty close to a 50-50. In fact, probably about 5 years ago, we had a Mezzaluna, a canoe stern blue water cruising boat, win the Queen's Cup with they even had their bicycles on the bow of the boat for the whole race. So with a race like this and handicaps, you put yourself in the right position, and anybody can win the race. Yeah,
that's so true, and that's what makes it attractive for both local and some of the one design fleets that come in and participate, because it isn't anybody can win. It's really there is a strategy. there's a thought process to it, but because it's a straight shot or close to it, it's never straight, but and with the wind coming up the lake, and when we see the variable conditions that we did this year, Craig mentioned it earlier, who plays the shifts, who survives the lightning storm, that anybody can win.
Last year, we found out that the folks at the race committees at Grosse Pointe Yacht Club did not like Dodgers and engines going to finish across the finish line. I say that jokingly, but it was one of those things. Before I ask about the actual sort of breakdown of the race, Sherry, you went across on a 52. Is that your first experience on a 52?
It was, yeah.
What's your thoughts?
It's fabulous. The boats are amazing. They're big and powerful, and yeah, just really, really neat boats. Comfortable. It was comfortable. I mean, they're even in that down floor, but it's fast. There's a lot to it, obviously.
Grit has luxury accommodations down below.
Well, yes. They're full on racing. There's nothing down below. It's black. It's all carbon fiber. Our nav station is on top of the diesel fuel tank right now, where our tactician found himself a lot. But it was amazing. And it's a first year for all of us on Grit. It's Scott Hornick purchased it in the winter, and it was the former Mockingbird. And that's the history there.
It was Chris's boat.
It was Chris's boat, correct.
Yep.
And so Scott Hornick bought it in the winter, and we got it back over on this side of the lake. And the majority of the crew is from a racing boat that we had previously that was a 1D43 triumvirate. So a lot of that crew was with us. And I actually watched your interview where talking about the GL52 racing, where Bob Hughes mentioned taking out a junior.
Yeah.
And we have, they're not juniors any longer. I still call them kids, of course, but we have a lot of late 20-somethings, I'll say, that grew up sailing, or a lot of college sailors. So they've joined the crew of Grit, which is really neat to see, because that's a whole new generation coming up. And in fact, one of them took the summer off to be a part of the program. So the commitment is there. It's a great experience for our crew because it's all brand new to us. And it's really neat.
We tried to put a Cynic together this winter to have a more of a 4 pros on a 52. We looked at Rio and we looked at Gladiator, and we just could not put the financing together and trying to do a nonprofit so college kids would have a chance to have big blue water experience. And we're still working on it. We're hoping that we get back to it next year. We were hoping Chris Duhan was very helpful in trying to get us across the board, and the guys were really terrific. But let me switch gears real quick. What's it take to put a race on? What kind of hours does it take to put a race on like you've got? You're laughing because I understand it's a full-time job for probably the last week, but
Craig's really 18. He just looks his age now because of the race.
Oh, well, the first thing I have to say is that, I have a wonderful wife who is, gracious and understanding, and was willing to loan me to the event after the last few weeks, I have umpteen million things to apologize to her for, but she graciously accepts those apologies, and life goes on. But overall, we just have this fantastic group of volunteers. The entire event is put on with volunteers, all the way from the judges, PROs, race committee, people sitting at the registration desk. We even had some volunteers working the outdoor grill, feeding all the sailors while we were in postponement. Because unfortunately our kitchen's a little short-staffed right now. But everybody jumped in and was willing to lend a hand wherever it was needed. And I can't say enough about to thank all the volunteers that we've had, and on top of it, again, Muskegon Yacht Club has been just a wonderful partner in this race, and in many ways went above and beyond and to help us out and make this the successful race that it was.
Sherry, I don't want to say pros and cons, but what's the rewards, and then maybe what's the challenges from an organizational standpoint for you that kind of cross your mind a week out?
Well, the challenges are a lot of the moving parts that come together at the last minute. And some of that can't be avoided. And this year was really interesting in that regard because we had COVID hanging over our heads. So Craig really couldn't put together a strict timeline, guidelines, checklists, all that kind of thing in advance because we didn't know what we were going to be handed. Were we having a big party? Were we coordinating with things on the other side? We knew we were having a race. So the race management part of it, Craig ran with and did a great job with and got the volunteers together. As he mentioned, it's an amazing group of people and there's a lot of history in this volunteer group. It's amazing the number of years and races that a lot of these people have done. So that was a big challenge.
In researching part of this race, the picture behind me, I guess it's on the other side, the cup, the Queen's Cup, which I found interesting. The NHL has for years said that the oldest competitive trophy in North America is the Stanley Cup. It turns out to be yours. Now, I'm not sure of all of the specifics. I don't know if it's consecutive years or, there was a number of years with the Queen's Cup that was in basements and garages and in a variety of places. But I believe 1853 is when the cup was actually made. Does that sound right? According to your history?
It was raced for in 1853. So I expect the silversmith took, just looking at the detail in that trophy, I'm sure the silversmith took quite some time to make it. It's even older than the America's Cup trophy, and we did have the silversmith, who's still around in London, validate that. So
I find it interesting that according to, I guess regulations, rule, the compliance is that you can't give a Queen's Cup to anybody that's not a British citizen, which is what they had raced for in the beginning. And I would be curious to take the trophy back and see what the folks currently in Windsor Castle, what they'd have to say. I'm sure they'd have nothing.
Well, you are correct there. It is in fact it was not awarded by the Queen. It was actually a second place trophy. It was a 50 guinea cup that was won by the American yacht Sylvie. Queen's actual trophies that are presented by the Queen or international yachts are not eligible for. So, or at least that's my understanding.
Well, listen, last question, and I get Sherry, this goes to both of you. We are on this side of the lake, and I've always had this opportunity. Iron Street is not very far from your yacht club down the street there.
Correct.
About 6 blocks up, I have an uncle who still lives there. So we spent a lot of time in Wauwatosa and coming down towards that end of the world. But my question for you is Lake Michigan the best of the 5 Great Lakes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
No question. I thought you were going to challenge us on which side of the lake was better there for a moment.
No.
And I'm from Michigan, so Craig and I were going to have a discussion on that. So
we spend a fair amount of time sailing out of St. Joe and family that's got boats there. It's really interesting when I ask people from Lake Michigan that the answer is always yes. And then when I ask people about Lake Huron, I say, is Lake Huron the best lake to sail? Almost 100%, they say, no, it's maybe the worst lake to sail. So there's some consensus to how the lake sail.
Well, that's good.
I appreciate your time. Go ahead.
If I may add one quick thing, I didn't answer your question about what's rewarding.
Yes.
About working on this. And I just want to say in conclusion for my answers to you, that what's rewarding, at least for me, and I think for all of us that work on it, is to see so many boats in such a variety of boats, from the 52s to the small cruisers, and to see everybody in the race as sailors. It's exciting to see them see each other's boats, admire the fleets, have the big guys in, have the little guys in. It's really neat. And the camaraderie, as with most regattas, is top notch. And so when at the end of the day, when you put this volunteer group together and pull off a race like this, and you watch the people, that's the reward. So it's amazing.
Oh yeah, I can't agree more. And, when I was standing on the deck of Fox talking to the crew there, I looked up and I saw Ode de Joy and Ericsson 32, which was the handicap wise the slowest boat to the fleet. Fox rated perf, I believe it was -108, and Ode de Joy rated positive 289, I think it is, or somewhere in that ballpark.
Yeah.
And just talking to the guys on Fox, I'm like, you know what, guys, probably one of your boats that is the biggest competition to win the cup overall is that Erickson sitting right over there. And it's true. And during the postponement, when I saw a steady stream of people walking out down the docks to where the TPs were tied up, and seeing the crews talk about the boats and compare notes and you could see some of the boats, skippers and crews of the boats like the Erickson and whatnot. They're able to look at these 52s and share something in common. They're all telling the same stories, the same war stories, and you know what? Everybody just loves the sport and wants it to grow, and that's just amazing from the top of the fleet to the bottom.
Both your comments. I really have to ask one last question. Why is sailing in our area, the Great Lakes, and when you have a race like this and some of the MAC races, why is it not better publicized? Why are we not higher in the food chain of publicity than we are when you think about the people that have come here for these races? If this was an equivalent golfer, bowler, ball player, the news would be all over it. Any thoughts? I'm just curious.
It's well, you'll wind us up on that topic. It's right, Greg. It's ridiculous, actually. In the United States, sailing just does not have the prestige as it does in other parts of the country or other parts of the world, I should say. I can't answer that question. I spent a lot of time working on different promotional aspects of sailing and working with the Around Alone campaign many years ago, trying to drum up attention and interest and even sponsorship from U.S. companies and U.S. people. At that time, it was deemed a perception of an elitist sport, which we all know couldn't be further from the truth, especially here in our area. And I think that has prevented a lot of larger exposure for the sport, perhaps. But I think that we just need people to claw into it. We need people that are passionate about it, that will claw into it and keep going, because we've got a really good thing going. I mean, we all know that. We're believers. And I just think that the U.S. needs to get on board. And I don't know how to make that happen, but I think if we take a bite at a time and work as much as possible to get that promotion out there and that word and introduce young people, keep people into the sport and hook them, I think that's a big step forward.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't agree more. It's the perception of sailing and being elitist is at one point in time that may have been the case, but it's definitely not now. And I can't tell you how many people that I've brought into sailing, beer can racing or whatnot, or even as I've traveled and talked to people about sailing, a lot of people don't understand that if you want to get into sailing, the easiest way to do it is go down to your local yacht club, with a 6-pack of beer, your thumb out, and a good attitude, and you'll be able to find you'll have a line of skippers wanting you to sail with them.
That's the truth. I find it.
And the other thing I say is I tell people, it's the biggest thrill you can get going 5 miles an hour.
It's funny. I can interview an America's Cup captain or a gold medalist from. We interviewed Anna Tunnicliffe, and because there's not a pretty girl in a bikini and a palm tree, I've interviewed a couple of folks who are traveling around the Great Lakes, and I get more views on a guy on a 27 Catalina than I do an America's Cup captain. I find that to be extraordinary. And the other thing I find extraordinary is the level of talent in the Great Lakes. And again, I'm coming at this sort of as a cruiser without the racing background, but the more I delve into doing these shows, it's phenomenal. Not only the people that are here, but the reputations we have outside of the area when you start talking to people in San Diego, Rhode Island, Florida, different places. And that's why I asked the question, because I think with the talent that's here, I think it's kind of overlooked.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. There's a lot of talent. There's a lot of local, meaning Midwest and even U.S. talent. You're absolutely right. That's overlooked. And it's because the United States just doesn't have the perception or the prestige that the international sailors do, when in fact there is a lot of talent right here.
Well, listen, thank you both so much for your time, and I appreciate it. And hopefully we'll have a great rest of the summer, and best luck to you guys.
We will. Thank you so much.
It was Craig Griffith, the Queen's Cup 2021 versions race director from the South Shore Yacht Club in Milwaukee, and Sherry Kent Jones, who was his glue to help keep that race together, part of that race committee that did such a great job this past weekend. Stay tuned a little bit. We're going to talk to the winner of the Queen's Cup, and actually we're going to talk to the one of the winning drivers, and Kieran Cyril. And Kieran runs the project manager for Victor Wild's Fox, and we'll be back in just a second. Talking with Kieran Cyril, who is the project manager, sailing manager for Victor Wild's Fox, who was victorious in the Queen's Cup, which is kind of what we're talking about. And first of all, Kieran, I really appreciate your time taking a few moments out. We're calling and talking to you from San Francisco. And maybe start talk a little bit about the Queen's Cup. You raced it last weekend, and you guys were victorious. And maybe you can just talk a little bit about the race before we get into talking about the boat.
Yeah, the Queen's Cup, it was my first time and Fox's first time for the Queen's Cup. And we based ourselves in Milwaukee for about 5 days before the race. And a lot of us had never been even to Milwaukee before. So, Fox is all about the adventure, and going to a new place, a new city with new people was a lot of fun. And it was cool to see the history behind both sailing in the area and the Queen's Cup itself.
We're going to talk a little bit later with Craig Griffith, who was the race director. And it turns out that the Queen's Cup, the actual cup, is older than the Stanley Cup, which purports itself as being the oldest trophy in North America. So it's the history of the trophy is really kind of cool. And we're going to talk to him about that. But is this your first time racing in freshwater this size?
We came to the Great Lakes last season when Fox was brand new, and we competed in the Harbor Springs and Bay Harbor regattas and had a lot of fun. But I've got to say, freshwater certainly has its perks. That's why we come back, I guess. It's
you don't have to take a shower when you're done sailing at the end of the day.
And so the boat likes it a little bit more too. Freshwater is good for the equipment.
Absolutely. Talk a little bit about the race. You guys did it in a little over 5 hours and 30 minutes, I think, something 5 and 37. Does that sound right?
The race was really, really unusual. It was we started in probably the lightest wind we've ever started a race in. Complete zero wind, basically. Drifting across the line, heavy fog, and millions of bugs. There's so many bugs, we called our mainsail the ultimate fly swatter, because every time the mainsail would flop side to side, about 1,000 bugs would fall out of the sky.
Right.
So the whole thing, at 5 minutes to go, we're normally looking at the wind and trying to figure out where to start. We're all busy spraying bug spray on each other. So it added to the adventure, and we started and got going very light air, had a good start, and soon enough the whole fleet, I think it was 6 TP52s maybe, we're all on code zeros and reaching basically straight at the finish line. And the race got a little bit more complicated. There was some storm cells, some thunder, some lightning, some big shifts, and we went anywhere from reaching with the masthead code zero to. You said you had a zero masthead or a zero reach. Yeah, we started with the mastheads. We went to the masthead zero shortly after the start, and we saw all lake conditions. I guess we had upwind, heavy, upwind, light, reaching, more reaching, windy reaching, light reaching, and rain, and nice and warm at times. So I think we got everything.
Full menu. You must have been. It's about what, 70 miles across, give or take.
Yeah, I think it's the exact race is 69 miles. Yeah.
So you must have been doing well over, at least averaging, if you're doing a little under 6 hours, you must have been doing a pretty good average at 12 and a half miles an hour then at some point.
Yeah, I think it might have been a little bit longer than the 6 hours, but, I think we were doing 18 knots at one stage. So moving pretty quick.
Fox is one of the boats. Am I saying this right? Boatin? Is that the manufacturer?
Yeah, exactly. That's the designer. Yeah.
You guys did a lot of changes in 2018 to kind of get it up to speed, because Victor was really prominent. Victor Wild was very prominent in sort of resurrecting it started in California in 1999. It kind of drifted a little bit, and in 2006, he was part of an organization that basically got together the TP52 series and kind of resurrected it. And in 2000, if I'm not mistaken, 2018, you guys did quite a bit of work on the boat. Am I correct?
Yeah, so actually, this is Victor's third TP52. So Victor's had quite a short sailing career, I guess, compared to some of the competitors. Victor started sailing about 10 years ago. And before that, he was into off-road racing, polo, and he's an artist as well. So really, he's lived a pretty broad life and a lot of adventure. And he was out on San Diego Bay one day about 10 years ago and saw some sailing boats and said, this could look fun. I might try it out. So I believe his first boat was a Bruckmann 42. And he raced that as hard as he could until everything broke. And then they fixed it all. And the person he was sailing with at the time, had shown him some more race boats. And he saw a TP52 for sale online and said, this could be interesting. I might buy this. So he bought originally the old Stark Raving Mad, which I believe was a 2007 TP52. And he raced that extensively, won the Big Boat Series in San Francisco, up and down the West Coast, Long Beach Race Week, Yachting Cup in San Diego, won all the big events on the West Coast. And after a while, he decided that he'd got as much out of that boat as he could. He'd optimized that boat. So he built a new boat. And in 2015, built Fox One in New Zealand. That was built by Cooks and Marine, who were very prominent builders, designed by Botine. And that was then really the launch of the Pac 52 series, which is the original California 52 racing. And we campaigned that boat hard from 2015 all the way through 2019. And then same again, we did optimizations, new bowsprit, new keel, new sails, mast upgrades, those sorts of things. And we came up against a very good competitor in the summer of 2019 in Newport, Rhode Island, that had a brand new boat. And we quickly realized the advantages that a brand new boat had. So there and then we signed on the dotted line and committed to building a new boat. We started building, I think, November 1, 2019. And that's where this boat was born, I guess.
Where does the Great Lakes fleet compare to the either East Coast or West Coast 52 fleets? Are we pretty comparable?
There's a reason we've come back, Greg. I think the quality of racing is definitely the highest in North America right now, if not the world. I think 7 TP52s is really great racing, and a lot of modern boats. But the biggest thing for us is that the owners and the people they're genuine racers and they enjoy the competition, and everything seems fair. So we enjoy, like I said, Victor's raced everywhere from New Zealand all the way to Newport, Rhode Island, and everywhere in between. And for us to come back 2 years in a row, something must be right.
We can detect a little bit of an Australian accent. So you obviously, how did you come across, how did you and Victor meet? How did you guys get together?
I started sailing with Victor in 2015, right after he had got Fox One. I was living in San Diego at the time, and they were looking for some people to join the program, and they were starting to ramp it up for the Pac 52 series. And I guess, Victor and I saw eye to eye, and the rest is history.
Is it fair to call you a professional sailor?
Yeah, I run my own business. It's mainly focuses on the project management of sailing teams. So the back end, the budgets, the crew liaison, organization, hiring, logistics. And then I also race with the teams as well.
Your company is called KS Sailing, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of simple.
There's a lot of kids around here that want to become pros, and a couple of them were part of our staff at Crescent. What piece of advice would you give a 20-year-old college student that wants to be a pro racer? What would be the first step? Because you're a lot younger than I am, so maybe you can give me some ideas.
Greg, I think it's been interesting in the last few years in America to be a pro sailor and see the differentiation between a small boat pro sailor and a big boat pro sailor. I think that there's a lot of people that make a living in the J70 or the Etchell or the Melges classes that are fantastic sailors. And that really, the American college programs, they prosper and breed kids that are good at that sailing. But I think what's really missing in America is people that enjoy the equipment, or they enjoy the technical aspect, or they enjoy the big projects. And, you go to one of these GL52 events and you'll notice there's a lot of, immigrants or international people in the fleet. And you go to an Etchell or a J70 regatta, and you notice it's mostly Americans. And for whatever reason, I think college sailors are attracted to like boats, small boats. But I think that if you have an opportunity to get involved in a trade or a job that might contribute to the program or contribute to the project, whether it was a marine electrician, work for a sail maker, work for a boat builder, and bring some of those skills to the team. And then I think just being enthusiastic, at the end of the day, if you say you want to go sailing, you want to meet new people, most people will welcome you with open arms.
Why are the best sailors in the world, from at least over the last couple of years, from down under, both New Zealand and from Australia?
I'm not sure about the best sailors in the world, but we definitely, we live on islands, Greg. We're immigrants, and we're eager to get out of there, and we're eager to prove ourselves.
No, I get that. I think that to some extent the Australians and the New Zealanders have done what old Soviet hockey players did. When the Soviets started to dominate hockey, they had learned from the Americans and then put their own style on it. And I think that, you go back to 89 and when we lost the cup the first time, 88, if you go back to that, you guys learned. And I hope I don't make anybody angry, but I think sometimes American arrogance gets in the way of progress. And I think that other folks are willing to do those things. And I know that's an editorial comment coming from nobody with any background, but in watching it, it's fun to watch and see how good you guys are, both small boats and big boats. You dominate the world right now. You really do.
Yeah, I think anyone that grew up in Australia, in the Southern Hemisphere, is blessed by being able to sail year round. And I think you make a really good point, is that the Southern Hemisphere mentality is to try new things. And if it doesn't work, try something else. And that's something that we talk about in America a lot, is, like you said, America's an old country and it's been doing things for a long time. And maybe some people think that maybe that's how it needs to be done. And definitely the Southern Hemisphere mentality is not quite the same as that. So we're all different, I guess.
Just curious, for Great Lakes sailors, what do you notice the difference between the ocean, other than the water? And I understand it's salt, but is there any subtleties that are much different between the lakes and the oceans, other than maybe swells?
I would not say, sailing the boat is any different to anywhere else, but the things that have impressed me coming to the Great Lakes and spending a little bit more time here is definitely how quickly weather develops, or how quickly the weather changes, and how inaccurate how hard it is for the weather forecasters to predict that. At the start of the Queen's Cup, I'd never seen anything like it, Greg. We had one weather forecast saying it would be from the north, one weather forecast it would be from the south. And this is people's jobs, and it was like that for days out. I mean, it was the crazy from a record race out to a 24-hour race. And we got sailing and none of the forecasts were right at all. So I think being able to think on your feet and sail to what you see, that's what definitely makes you sail well in the lakes.
There used to be a weatherman. You said you lived in San Diego for a while. There used to be a television station there called KFMB. Actually worked there as a radio guy in the evenings. And the weatherman would open the window. He had his office with a window in it. He would open the window when they would look out the window, and that's the way he would predict the weather, because it was always the same 351 days a year. And around here, you can have 17 different weather apps, and God bless you if you can come up with composite of something that makes sense. So, it can go from 0 to, we had 50 knot winds 2 nights ago, and your boat bounces around, and it is what it is, and you get used to different kinds of. Just to back up, when is your next trip back to the Great Lakes?
So the next event with Fox is the Harbor Springs Ugata Regatta in late July. So we're looking forward to that. We'll come back for 3 days of training and 3 days of racing, and then shortly thereafter back to Bay Harbor. And then we finish out the Great Lakes 52 series at the Makatawa Challenge there at Makatawa Bay Yacht Club in Holland. In Makatawa. So we committed to the whole season, and we did the Queen's Cup because for the season scoring, you need to have an offshore race, and that was the most suitable race for Victor. And it'll be interesting to see what happens next year. At this stage, we'd love to come back.
Cool. Well, listen, I'm hoping we'll get a chance to run our paths will cross either at Bay Harbor or over at Harbor Springs. And I can't tell you how much I've appreciated the time spending with us.
Thanks, Greg. I just want to say, this GL52 series, it has the makings of something special, and that wouldn't be what it is without the Great Lakes hospitality. I think there's some staple owners in Bob Hughes and Doug DeVos that really have put this together, and it shows that their Midwestern welcome is important. And I think this thing can keep growing. So appreciate you making the time for us, and thanks to everyone in the Great Lakes for welcoming Fox.
Say hi to Victor for me and tell him hopefully he'll be here. Maybe I can say hello to him if you guys get up there. We got a place in Harbor, so we're up there quite often.
You're around, let me know.
Yeah, I absolutely will. Listen, I appreciate the time, and you have yourself a great day, and hopefully we'll see you in 2 or 3 weeks.
Thanks, Greg. See ya.
Thanks, man. Lucky enough, I'm sitting at the helm here of a 47-foot burger built 72 years ago. Philip Rhodes design. It was built up in Manitowoc, Wisconsin. We're going to talk a little bit with Kenny Ginger, who is its owner. It's had a variety of histories, and we're going to kind of do some things on Inside Great Lakes Sailing as it relates to boats and sort of older boats that we want to bring up to date on the nautical themes and ideas. One of the cool things about these boats, if you look around, is if you look back behind us, you got some nice normal new things for ice coolers and the rest of it, but this is an interesting boat, and Kenny will bring a little bit of it to life. We think it's an updated version of some of the stories. We're going to do this boat and a number of others. This boat built 72 years ago. It's older than I am, most of the folks. We think it'll be a fun little segment, and we hope you enjoy it. So stay tuned, and we'll be back in a moment. Kenny, how'd you get the name Mary Grace?
Well, it was the original name was Shelmar, and then it was named Carrie after the daughter of the second owner. And the trying to think of his name. Bob Evans was the name of the guy I bought it from, and he named it Mary Grace. But when Mary and I went to look at it, she was not happy. So I say that by the grace of Mary, I got to buy her, so that's where Mary Grace is now. So, but that's good.
Yeah. We're talking with Kenny Ginger, and we are aboard a 47-foot. Get this right, Kenny. This is built.
It's a burger catch built up in Manitowoc.
Okay, 72 years old, built in
1949. Well, the keel was laid in 1949, and it's launched in 1950.
Okay, maybe start with the history of the boat.
Well, what I know about it. It's of course it's quarter-inch steel plate with a wood teak deck and teak top sides. It's 36,000 pounds. It's powered by a 35-horse Beta Marine diesel. It has all electronics, autopilot, and refrigeration. It accommodates 5 now, 1 double bed and 3 singles.
This is a Rhodes design, am I correct?
That's Rhodes. Philip Rhodes designed it.
He built it, or he designed it, but it's a one-off.
It's a one-off.
So maybe explain that, because it's built by Berger, right?
Yeah, and Philip, a doctor hired, I don't remember his name, but a doctor hired Philip Rhodes to design a boat, then hired Berger Yachts to build it.
How did you get involved in this boat?
I looked on it. It's an interesting story. I looked in the Sail magazine, or what Cruising World, one of them, and there was an advertisement for this boat, and it looked like it was in Wisconsin. Well, I told my wife, Mary, I said, we ought to just do a road trip. Might be fun. Well, I called him. The boat wasn't in Waukegan. No, where was it? Anyway, Waukegan area, north side of the lake. And it's listed by Gunner Yacht Sales, I think. And anyway, he said, no, it's in Lake Lanier, Georgia. I said, well, that's the end of that little fun trip. So that's how they got my name. Well, it was listed for $249,000
Wow.
at that point. And they calls me up about, a couple months later and said, would you like it for half price? I said, nah, it's still too much. So about a couple more months go by, and he calls me, you want half of that? I said, sold. So we got loaded on a plane, went to Lake Lanier, Georgia, looked at it, and it was in horrible shape. It had paint buckets and blue tarps and everything all over it.
How long had it been sitting?
It was in the water,
Okay.
but it became a yacht club mascot, sort of.
Right.
Yeah, I don't think it had been taken out in years. But the guy that had it completely restored, and then his wife got into horses, and he kind of got out of the boating idea.
What do you know now about wood boats that you didn't know before?
This one is double jeopardy. First of all, the maintenance on this thing is all the time.
Yeah.
And that now not only do I have to maintain wood, I got to maintain steel too. So I've got a double-edged sword there.
What's worse?
The steel probably the hardest to get to. You almost have to take the boat apart to get to some of it. So.
How much time do you
Is that
spend
real
working
glass?
on teak?
Yeah. Well, this year I've already got Nail in it, so if 2 somebody weeks was in, and break I've it, probably got another fall on some minimum 2 weeks. So I'm trying to do it at 6 hours increments, because what I used to do was a 10 or 12-hour day, and my age has limited me to that kind of procedure now. So
Talk about the sailing characteristics of the boat.
this boat sails absolutely marvelous. It's a catch rig, so it's balanced. It's very, very light on the helm, even in a heavy wind. And she'll do eight knots on a good day.
I want to ask the question, and I don't want to sound stupid when I ask it, but it seems to me from some of the boats that we've done, we have a New York 26 in our harbor. Nautical engineering hasn't changed an awful lot in the last 100 years. It's pretty amazing how well they built boats even 75, 100 years ago.
Yes. I've been watching a special called Tally Ho on YouTube, and he's basically rebuilding the boat. And it's very interesting because you learn a lot of little things. Made me really learn that I didn't want to build a new wooden boat, though.
I think of the contrast of a guy like, well, now I got to think of his name, the golf course architect. Oh my gosh, Oakland Hills. I'll have to edit this, but I'm thinking as I'm speaking. Oh my God.
Palmer?
No. Way back in 1920s.
Oh.
Oh my God, I've lost my brain for a second. Give me a second to think about it. Donald Ross. There we go. I'll cut this in as I say it. I guess I think about something as simple as like Donald Ross Society. You know, they built golf course back in the 1915, 1920s, where they didn't have these big earth-moving. You know, they're still playing those golf courses. They build them differently than they built them, 100 years ago, but they're still playable.
Yeah.
Boats are almost the same thing. If you look at this, it doesn't look out of shape in the harbor. Yet it's 75. It's older than both of us.
Almost. I don't know about older than both of us, but yeah, it's just remarkably built and made. Well, I maintain it as best I can, I guess.
Yeah. What happens with parts? Is that a problem with something this old?
No, not really. Either I have to have them made or I make them myself. So.
What's the most fun on this boat?
The most fun on this boat was a trip. We had 12 captains on board, and we were doing like 10, 11 knots, and we sailed up to South Haven, pulled in for lunch, turned around, came back, and before dark we were back tied up to the dock. And everybody had a great time. And it was one of those days that you can't even imagine. So
What's the fastest you've had this going?
about 12 back of surfing down waves, probably 12, 13.
Oh, that's moving for something this
It makes
size.
a lot of noise when it goes that fast.
You just recently had a problem with your mast too, didn't you? Have to do some work and glue and.
I had a little rot, and well, when I bought it, I had hired Ralph to redo like the first 12 feet maybe of both masts that were rotting up at the top.
Yeah.
I didn't know it. The surveyor didn't want to climb the mast, and he should have. So I ended up having Ralph, a very craftsman that worked here at Anchor's Way, rebuild my mast that winter.
We should mention we are in the harbor here at St. Joe's.
Yes.
2 bridges in,
2 bridges in.
off of Lake Michigan, which is where you guys sail most of the time.
Yes.
And it's you got a great view. Where, in fact, if you can, I'll pan over. You can see the Westinghouse now Whirlpool headquarters. Although that's been dormant lately because everybody went home for the pandemic.
Yeah, and they're building them back up. I see the cars coming back slowly. So.
What do you like about sailing on Lake Michigan?
Well, fresh water for one. This side of the lake is just absolutely gorgeous. If you can sail along the shore, nice sandy beaches and cliffs, and the other side's kind of rocky. And,
The harbors over here are also a little nicer than what they are on the Lake Huron
plus the fact
side.
we have a harbor every so many, 6 to 8 miles.
Yeah.
So if you got in trouble, you got a place to go.
How long you been sailing?
I started sailing. I bought my first sailboat at 15.
What'd you buy?
I bought a little wooden Lightning and brought it home and restored it, of course, and then started sailing and been sailing ever since.
Mom and Dad sail?
Nope. They started sailing. My dad moved to California, San Diego, and he bought a Catalina 32. It was a nice little fast boat. I sailed it in the San Diego harbor.
Lights are blowing out.
We're going to get a nice lovely sail. Every time it comes out.
What?
What's that camera? Smile at it.
It's blowing the other direction.
Out in the middle of Lake Michigan, you'd expect just to be nice and calm, but if you can see the waves, they are certainly up from a 30-knot breeze from last night. 75-year-old boat, 36,000 pounds. It's still pretty amazing to see these boats sail the way they sail, even in conditions like this.